In Monterey County, California, the disappearance of Kristen Smart. 26 years ago, she was a student at Cal Poly when she disappeared. She's never been found, but now her classmate, Paul Flores, is on trial accused of her murder. We have the latest.
I think her story is a relatable one. I hear from a lot of young women or older women who say this could have been me.
In Broward County, Florida, the penalty phase of the trial of Parkland school shooter Nickolas Cruz is back underway. Today, the jury saw a chilling cell phone video recorded by the shooter the day of the massacre. Our think tank weighs in.
Load my bags and get my AR and shoot people down at the main courtyard. Wait, and people will die.
On the docket tonight, 14-year-old Aiden Fucci is locked up, accused of the brutal murder of his classmate Tristan Bailey, after officials say he stabbed her 114 times. We have a preview of the case.
Why am I here? I just want to talk to my mom and dad. What's going on? What's going on?
Plus, NFL star Deshaun Watson has been hit with a 6-game suspension after 24 women have come forward accusing him of sexual misconduct. Tonight's 13th juror question, is the 6-game suspension appropriate? Get ready. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. A very good Monday evening to you and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Julie Grant in tonight for Vinnie Politan. We begin in Salinas, California, where we're in the 5th day of testimony in the Kristen Smart murder trial. Defendant Paul Flores is accused of murdering the college freshman back in 1996. And his dad, Ruben Flores, is accused of being an accessory to the crime. Smart vanished after attending an off-campus party at Cal Poly State University in San Luis Obispo. Her disappearance made national headlines for more than 25 years. That is until Paul Flores and his father, Ruben Flores, were arrested in 2021 and accused in connection to her death. Let's bring in now someone who is there outside of the courthouse watching all the action unfolding. Core TV crime and justice reporter Matt Johnson is on the program tonight. Matt, quite a day you had today. Tell us all about it, please.
Very big day and a very big ending to the day. As I reported last hour, as Ruben Flores was exiting the courthouse here in Salinas County, I asked him if he plans on testifying. His attorney jumped in and said that they're under a gag order, but we won't know until the end of the trial. So there is that. The day started with another delay in this case because another juror had to be replaced, this time for his team. Ruben Flores lost a juror, an alternate was sworn in. We don't know the reason why. And there was a problem with his jury last week, and that's the reason why there was a delay in this trial, leading to today, finally day 5 of testimony in what Kristen Smart's family says is 25, 26 years in the making. Julie?
Right, Matt. You know, so much of this case has been so hush-hush, and I know you know this. You've worked in California for years. You've done reporting in Los Angeles, and it's been a mystery. There's been so much talk about it, and even when the arrest came, there was still so much that was sealed and not disclosed to the public. But I understand today there was a little bit of a story told through the first witness, a detective called by the state. Would you tell us what he shared with the jury, please?
Right. He was a big witness on this day 5 of testimony and someone that everyone wanted to listen to very closely. In the overflow gallery where I was, everyone was kind of leaning in as we were taking notes because we want to know exactly what the evidence is in this case for prosecutors down in Slowtown, San Luis Obispo. In that county, again, it was moved up here to the Salinas courthouse. But this was investigator detective with San Luis Obispo. This was James Camp, and he was the one that actually was assigned to the case to collect evidence and visit the alleged crime scene after the arrests were made. So he went down to the house of this party house where Flores and Smart had been seen with each other Memorial Day weekend, 1996, and then he kind of did the lay of the land and mapped out, saying that it was only about an 8-minute walk to the dormitories. Kristen Smart and Paul Flores lived in separate dormitories on campus on this Cal Poly San Luis Obispo campus, and he went into detail, Julie, about Paul Flores' dorm room, and that was pretty interesting because he gave us the lay of the land of that very small dorm room that was on the first floor of this building and how it had a window overlooking an access road, and then that kind of leads to some smaller roads here in that area, then down to the 101, which is a major highway, Pacific Coast Highway, which of course runs from Oregon all the way down to Los Angeles.
Wow, that could be what happened there. I suspect that this is going to build from here on out. He laid the groundwork there for perhaps what is the story. I know you know this, Matt, from all the trials you've covered. The state has to tell the story of how she died. I mean, for years, everybody's wondering what happened to her. Her body's never been found, which, as you know, that's a very good fact for the defense side. Her roommate shed some light on the story today, too, as I understand it. I know you were watching her closely. What did she have to say, please, Matt?
She did not know Kristen that well, so they were assigned each other as roommates through the university system. They were both freshmen in 1996, and they knew each other for about 3 months, and then that leads up to Memorial Day weekend in 1996, and they're going to go to separate parties, go their separate ways. This roommate was kind of describing, her name is Crystal Calvin at the time. Crystal is kind of describing the fact that, yeah, we weren't the best of friends, but we would open up to each other and we would share things with each other, including another time in this short amount of time that we knew each other, Kristen said, hey, I'm not going to be home tonight, so don't worry about me. That wasn't the case the night that she went missing. She never said, don't worry about me. She never said, I'm not going to be home. And that kind of paints the picture that, you know, this was uncharacteristic for Kristen Smart.
Oh, absolutely, Matt. You know that sometimes, you know, omissions are more telling than admissions. And so that's a huge fact the state can hang its hat on in trying to piece together this story. And I understand as the day progressed, one of the final witnesses sort of put one of the pieces to the puzzle together, right? A guy named Stephen Fleming talked about seeing Kristen Smart and Ruben Flores together.
Right, because they all lived in the same dormitory. They lived in Muir Dormitory on San Luis Obispo campus. And he said that he knew of Paul Flores, that Paul Flores had somewhat of a reputation. He testified that some of the ladies in the dorm had confided in him that they did not think that, they just thought that he was, quote unquote, creepy. And there was one instance where he saw Kristen and Paul Flores in a dorm together, and they were very close together, less than 5 feet apart. And he said that he got chills. There was some sort of that testimony when he saw that. So that's what these two juries heard today.
Oh, my, Matt. And correction, please, I misspoke. That was not Ruben, obviously Paul, as you said, because they were students together on campus at the same time. Paul Flores and Kristen Smart seen together. I'm sure it's going to be another big day tomorrow, and you will be there for it all. Court TV crime and justice reporter Matt Johnson live tonight in Salinas, California. Thank you kindly for all of that, Matt. Going to bring in our think tank now tonight. Joining us in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Al Wunsch III. In Stamford, Connecticut, criminal defense attorney Darnell Crosland. And in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. It is great to see you all tonight. Thank you so much for coming on Closing Arguments. Oh, boy. Where do we begin with this one? What I want to know is what hasn't been released to the public, right? And Al Wunsch, let me go to you on this one, please. This is one of those where so many years passed, and suddenly the state's able to execute, you know, multiple search warrants, recover all sorts of different things, come forward with these charges. But still, the story is unclear to the public about what happened to Kristen Smart and by whom, really? Your thoughts on that and how this cold case affects both the state's case at this juncture and the defense for these two individuals?
Well, I'll tell you this, it's a mystery to us too, because they've been very, very secretive with regards to the evidence that's been set out. They're using an eyedropper to put out what they've got. There's been no, slam bam evidence that I've seen as of yet. They've got a case that is going to have to be very deliberate because they don't have a body. So it's a jigsaw puzzle. They're building a jigsaw puzzle very slowly. They're putting the pieces together, and they're going to hope for a conviction. They've got a problem with no body. They've got a problem with 26 years down the line. And so there's a number of issues that come into play, and questionable evidence from what we have seen thus far. I mean, blood residue, but they're not sure it's human blood. They're not sure it's her blood. I mean, so there is stuff that is going to be very difficult to create the mosaic that they have to create in order to get a conviction in this case. But they're doing it in a very slow, deliberate way. And it's the only way you can do it on a case that's got, that kind of teeth, 26 years.
Right, Al, right. Darnell, Crosland, let me go to you on this one, please. We know that there's a gag order in place on this case, and our Matt Johnson has been asking everybody, for information, right? And those who are parties to the case, witnesses to the case, can't answer, but of course he's still trying. He saw Ruben Flores tonight after the testimony had concluded for the day. He waved at him, asked him if he would testify. The lawyer said they'd decide last minute about whether or not he would be testifying. Ruben is not accused of the murder. Ruben is accused of being an accessory after the fact, perhaps in some cover-up that the state is alleging here. As Al pointed out, the facts are all still pretty unclear. But what do you think about the idea of Ruben Flores testifying? Couldn't this hurt his son if he does? I want your thoughts as a criminal defense attorney, please, Darnell.
Well, thank you for giving me that question. I was hoping I got that question. It's not only a good question, but it's an easy question. And as Al said, this whole thing has been coming through like a slow drip in terms of what comes out. I totally object to the idea of a gag order. I believe in total transparency. It's not an issue that if there was no gag order, the jury might be tainted by the public coverage, because there is public coverage. So I'm against the gag order. But as to your question specifically, the rules are normally, if it's a close call in litigation, I think that the defendants or people on their behalf should testify. In this particular case, Paul and Ruben should not testify, because as Al said, it's an old case. They have no body. They're trying their best to pull together a circumstantial case. And the only thing that testifying can do is help give these people more than they have. So now this is not one of those close calls where I normally tell my clients, go ahead and testify, let the jury know what happened here, try to pull it together if you can. Not in this case. They have nothing, let them proceed with nothing, and don't testify.
Agreed. Well said, Darnell. Jennifer Brandt, I want to pick your brain about these juries. This case is unique, and that Her Honor is allowing two different juries. So the state has joined these two, father and son, in the criminal prosecution. But we know they're facing very different charges. Paul Flores' charges are far more serious. He's being accused of doing the murder. Ruben, dad, is being accused of helping son cover up the murder. With the juries, I'm really curious, and nobody's been able to see the juries yet. We know our Matt Johnson's been looking for them, but because of the way they're being shuffled out and they've got most of the media in the overflow room, it's been hard to get a look at them, but eventually we'll be able to. But I wondered, when you're picking the juries, I'm curious if Dad's jury is skewing older. I want to get your thoughts on who you might want on those respective juries if you're representing either of those defendants, please, Jennifer.
Yeah, well, that's a tough one because, they're hearing all of the evidence. And I think that's what's most interesting about this, because both juries are hearing the whole story at once. And so they can't help but, kind of putting it all together. Now, will that hurt, the cases, especially for Ruben Flores, because they're going to hear all of this testimony about Paul Flores and how his relationship was with Kristen Stewart, et cetera, et cetera. So, does that affect the father if people are starting to put it together and say, maybe he did do something, was the father involved? I think it's hard to separate out the cases. But in terms of who should be on the jury, it's very hard to say.
And let me clarify, please, Jennifer, before you go any further, and I'll go back to you and let you answer about who you ideally would want as a juror. It's my understanding the reason is that because the jury hearing Paul's case, or I'm sorry, excuse me, hearing Ruben's case, the dad's case, could be, you know, tainted by a lot of the bad facts from son's case. They're not hearing everything, is my understanding. It's my understanding they're being taken out and brought back in. That's what I was told. Somebody please correct me on that if I've gotten some wrong information, but our cameras aren't in there, so we can't even see this and verify, but it's my understanding that's why, to your point, Jennifer, so that otherwise it wouldn't make sense, right? You just have the same jury. This is why the judge has separated them, but
I just heard there's so much, I heard there's so much shifting around in terms of people moving in and out in different, you know, getting in and out of there, so it makes it, I think, difficult in even handling the case.
Oh,
but
sure.
in terms of
who you want on the jury.
Who you want on the jury. I mean, I think for the father, you know, you want maybe a group of jurors, you know, who might be more sympathetic to him, who might kind of feel for him. He's a dad, kind of protecting his son. For Paul, you know, maybe younger men, certainly not women. I don't think you want on this jury if you had a choice, you know, because they're looking at him and saying, hey, this is some guy maybe caught in a bad situation. So I think that's what you're looking for ideally.
Exactly. I was thinking maybe younger college age guys for him and then parents for Ruben. That's who I would want.
Or even older, senior citizens.
Jennifer, thank you.
I tend to go with women on these cases more, but I'll tell you, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll talk more. We got to hit a break. My think tank's going to stay with me this whole hour, and we want you to stay with us at home. Please, time for a break. When we come back right after this, we're going to head to Florida, where it was a tough day, and I mean a tough, heart-wrenching day of testimony in the penalty phase of the trial of Parkland school shooter Nickolas Cruz. The jury saw some videos from Cruz's phone just days before the massacre, where he describes his plans for the attack. They also heard from family members of victims in the case who were killed. We'll be right back after this.
The third video was February 11th, 2018, 1:55 and 5 seconds in the afternoon.
Okay. My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I think I can do a good done. Location is Stone Douglas in Parkland, Florida. It's going to be a big event. And when you see me on the news, you'll all know who I am. You're all going to die. Pew, 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 pew.
Just a total animal. That was a video that police found on Nickolas Cruz's cell phone that was shot 3 days before he made good on those threats and went to Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, killing 14 of his fellow students and 3 faculty members. Now, that what we just saw, that sick, disgusting piece of video, was one of 3 cell phone videos that the jury watched today as part of the penalty phase of his trial, in what can be best described as an emotionally exhausting day in that courtroom. And we're going to take a closer look at that video in just a moment. First, though, we want to focus on what the jury heard today. Family members of 3 of the people murdered by Nickolas Cruz spoke to the court. Students Joaquin Oliver, Alina Petty, and teacher Scott Beagle. Their victim impact statements describing the grief, the shock, the loss of their beloved loved ones that were their heart, their soul, everything. This is hard to watch. Let me warn you, take a look at some of what they shared with the court.
Are you the mother of Joaquin Oliver?
Yes, I am.
But today, I must let the world hear from me. To accept that he's not physically here with us, it still is an issue for me. Why? Because it hurts me very deeply. I must let the listeners feel how painful it is to live with this deep hole in my heart. I can deal with my family gatherings. It is impossible to deal with everybody that was used to get together with, and he is not there. That's done. I can't share happy moments or see pictures with all his cousins, and he's not there.
I'm gonna do it. Joaquin Oliver. A name etched into the depths of my soul. I lost the love letters he was writing for me in that 4th period creative writing class. I never actually received them. They were pinned to his shirt. I miss my best friend and the way he made me feel whole.
On February 14th, 2018, my heart stopped beating. Our 4th and youngest child, Elena Petty, was taken back home to live with our Heavenly Father.
Elena was 14 years old when she died. She went to school that day in her uniform for JROTC, which was a school program she loved. She was in her final class of the day when she died. I'd like to talk a little bit about who she was. I am 5 years her senior, but in many ways, she was more grown up than I feel I ever will be.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about my son, Scott J. Beagle. It's been 1,630 days since I last spoke to my son. On February 14th, 2018, my life was shattered forever. I have a box over my heart with a lid so tightly closed, trying to keep all my emotions under control. But today, I'm taking the lid off that box. I spoke with Scott almost every day. The conversations could be just 30-second touch, hi, Mom, can't talk, but just making sure you're okay. Or a 5-minute conversation, Mom, I gotta tell you about our cross-country meet today. Or I have a great idea for a lesson plan I wanna run by you.
Scott looked me straight in the eye and said, all I ask is that you make my mother happy. That was the easy part. After Linda and I got married, I decided that I wanted to adopt Scott and Melissa. Scott and Linda are New York Yankee fans. I am a New York Met fan. Even though Scott was a lifelong Yankee fan, he made a point of making sure we went to at least one Met game a season. The last game we went to was in 2017. I really miss those games. I really miss a catch with my son.
I want to bring in now Linny Sue Paul from our sister station, WPTV in Florida. Now, Linny, great to see you. Thank you for making time for us and coming on the program tonight. I know that you were in the courtroom watching that heart-wrenching testimony all day long. Describe for us what it was like being in the courtroom today and hearing all of that.
Just absolutely heartbreaking. Words can't even describe how horrifying it was to hear about what this man did to their families. And the other part of it is that they're sharing this pain and they're a few feet away from him. So you can only imagine how painful this was, and sharing all of this after hearing the emotional testimony from medical examiners about the autopsy, seeing that chilling video, and then to share this, it was beyond words.
I can't even imagine. Could you feel it, like when you're sitting there in the gallery, did it feel kind of like you could just cut the tension with a knife?
For sure. As everyone was very emotional. You saw members of the jury tearing up. You even saw the defense getting emotional and tearing up during some of the testimony from families. And it was just all around heartbreaking.
Wow. And do you mean like defense attorneys? Is that who you saw getting emotional, Linny?
Yes, yes. Not the defendant. He had his head down, his head in his hands, scribbling on a paper the entire time. Just, yeah, you see right there, during portions of the video, he plugs his ears and can't even hear the sounds that he inflicted upon others. So it's hard to watch, but it was the defense attorneys that you could see tearing up today.
Wow. That's really something. I'm so glad you pointed that out for us, Lenny. Thank you for that. And Nickolas Cruz here, I mean, plug in his ears. He was a maniac that day, terrorized that school, and then he can't bear to look at the loved ones of those people he murdered. Just disgusting. But that's been his pattern throughout this thing. He just puts his head down and plugs his ears, all that. But he can't escape this penalty phase, that's for sure. These prosecutors, as you know, Lenny, they are very, very aggressive. And speaking of aggressive, in their presentation, they introduced video evidence today that I wanted to ask you about, please. We know that detectives were able to recover lots of bits of digital evidence from Nickolas Cruz's devices. His cell phone in particular had those sick videos that he took. And we have another one we want to play now, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Let's take a look at this piece of evidence now together.
So the first video that was recorded was February 8th, 2018 at 2:39 and 19 seconds in the afternoon.
Okay. Your Honor, may we publish this, please?
You may.
All right, so here's the plan. I'm gonna go take an Uber in the afternoon before 2:40. From there, I'll go onto school campus, walk up the stairs, unload my bags, and get my AR and shoot people down at the main courtyard. Await, and people will die.
Lenny, when you were watching the reactions in the courtroom, I know you were paying a lot of attention to the jury today. What did you see from them as these videos were being played?
They were just stoic. They weren't able to move much. They were just staring at that video in disbelief. And it was the testimony that really gripped them today. You know, you saw the videos, but they matched up with a lot of his disturbing online searches that we've heard about through this time. So I think they were prepared to see that to a certain degree, especially because the lead prosecutor laid that out in his opening statements and shared those words with us. So hearing it resonated with what he said at the very beginning of this trial, but it was that testimony from the families and seeing them bare their soul. And even one mother saying, "Thank you for listening to a grieving mother." So many of these families actually saying thank you to the jury for hearing them.
Wow. That's got to leave such an impression with them. I mean, that's like touching their hearts. Just one human being to another human being. Forget the court of law, just person to person. Lenny Sue Paul, thank you so much for all of your reporting tonight. It's really been great having you on Closing Arguments.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, now I want to bring in my think tank and talk a little more about this video evidence, the victim impact statements, what the jury heard today in Florida. Still with me, Al Wunsch III. He is a criminal defense attorney and formerly served as a prosecutor, criminal defense attorney Darnell Crosland, and family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. Great to have you all on the show. Darnell Crosland, I want to start with you, please, on this one. And this is a tough one. For these defense attorneys, and when I heard Lenny saying that they actually got emotional, I mean, they're people too who have a tough job. I've been saying since the start of this case, do not get mad at Nickolas Cruz's defense attorneys. It's a tough job. They've got to do it. It's required by our U.S. Constitution, the Florida Constitution. Them getting emotional, though. Is there a problem you see with that, Darnell?
Yes, absolutely. But as you said when you were speaking to Lenny, you said these words, forget the court of law, human to human. So when you talk human to human, defense attorneys are human. And the only issue that I have with these phases is this. The testimony you heard is very emotional. I was even moved just watching and hearing television. You can't dismiss that. The issue that we have is how much of this depends on law? How much of this as a defense attorney is going to be able to say, put your emotions aside, but you have to follow these elements? And you don't have a lot of that. If it was the trial, then you say in order to find a person guilty, you have to find element 1, 2, and 3 of burglary or whatever it is. In this case, it's just testimony after testimony after testimony of emotions, and there's no way this jury is not going to be moved by that. So the defense team cannot win a contest of emotion when they do their mitigation, there's no possible way these victim impact statements are going to be outshined by any type of mitigation. So it's an uphill battle. And, this is one of those cases as a defense attorney, you say, well, you're going to do the best you can, but it doesn't look good. I mean, because this was a horrible, horrible situation, period.
Oh, absolutely. It looks very, very bad for Nickolas Cruz. Al Wunsch, let me go to you on this one, please. I know you've been watching this penalty phase play out since it began. You formerly served as a prosecutor. Is there any risk here of the state over trying this portion of the trial? Is there any point where it might be too much evidence, or is there no risk of that in your view, please?
Well, I'm not a particular fan of the death penalty, and I think he pled guilty, and he should be rotting in jail for the rest of his life. He was very immature. Those tapes demonstrate how immature he is. The conduct with him holding his ears and looking down demonstrates, in my opinion, remorse. It doesn't demonstrate anything except for a kid who is absolutely just devastated as to what he's done and what he's inflicted into people. And I don't see, the question I have is, what is the response he's supposed to have while this is going on? Should he be sitting there with a smile on his face? Should he be sitting there looking bored? It's a very, very difficult thing to be sitting there and watching what your handiwork has done. But I am thoroughly convinced that they are overkilling this case for a reason, and I don't know why. I mean, if you told me that by putting 1,000 witnesses on, as a result of this trial, all people will now be good, and we'll never have to worry about gun crime and murder and anything else, then I say, so be it, go forward with it. But it's not. How many shootings have we had since this one? Okay, it's not. It's an absolute pointless decision by the state of Florida to go forward on this with a kid who is exceedingly
go forward on
immature.
what? Would you clarify for me, please?
Death penalty. Going forward on the death penalty.
You think that's pointless, Al?
Absolutely, because he's pled guilty. If he did not plead guilty, then I have no mercy for him. He pled guilty to the crime. Now, I know they're allowed
we
to
don't
go
want to get
forward
into
on the
political
death.
debate. That's your view.
No,
Just to
it's
be
a
clear,
political
you're entitled to it, certainly.
Right, but it's my opinion that he should rot in jail forever. I don't think that they should be putting the victims through this. I don't think they should be sitting them up there and using this for whatever purposes they want to use it for. I don't think that the motive is good in this. I think that he should be rotting in jail for the rest of his life. I think he pled guilty.
And that's not what I'm asking. That's not what I'm asking. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Can I just interrupt here? I can't agree with Al at all on this one because, Al looks at him as a poor kid, showing a lot of remorse. I think what this testimony shows, what this presentation shows, the videos, shows that he's a complete animal. He has no remorse whatsoever.
There's no argument that he's not.
He was callous and cold, Al, and that is why the jury needs to see this. They need to see how he calculated this, how he planned this, what he was thinking, what he was searching, and then that impact that his acts had on these horrible impact on these families and how it's affected them and will affect them for the rest of their lives. And to have him sit there covering his ears, no, does not show remorse in my mind. It shows how cold and callous he is because he doesn't even want to be bothered with any of it. He doesn't want to see it. You don't see him crying or showing any emotion. Everyone else will feel emotion, but he doesn't show any emotion. So I think that's the point of having this trial or having this presentation and letting the jury see exactly who he is. He is not some poor kid. He is somebody who is cold and calculating and purely evil to go ahead and do something like this. Absolutely. So that's why we need to have it.
All that will be in the state's closing argument. Jennifer Brandt, thank you for that. Al Wunsch, thank you for your views, and Darnell Crosland for yours as well. We're going to keep talking about this one. Share us your opinions as well. Tweet us at Court TV. Let us know what you think about this case. Coming up next, we're going to turn our attention to another case, the case against 15-year-old Aiden Fucci. Quickly move into trial. The 15-year-old accused of stabbing to death his 13-year-old classmate who was a cheerleader at their school. We'll have the latest on the case straight ahead.
I do find that there is probable cause to believe that the offense occurred. And at this time, I'm going to order that Mr. Fucci be detained by the Department of Juvenile Justice.
That was 15-year-old murder suspect Aiden Fucci, days after he was arrested for the stabbing death of his classmate, Kristen Bailey. She was a 13-year-old cheerleader and classmate of his at Patriot Oaks Academy in St. Johns County, Florida. Prosecutors say that she was stabbed 114 times on Mother's Day back in 2021. The medical examiner found that based on the nature of her injuries, it appears the suspect was behind her. The ME also noted that there was a handwritten word karma on her left ankle and a smiley face drawn on her right ankle. Fucci is being held in juvenile detention while his case is moving forward. He is charged as an adult, though, with first-degree premeditated murder, which is a capital felony in Florida. However, since he is not yet 18 years of age, if he is convicted of Kristen Bailey's murder, the maximum sentence he could face is life in prison. 114 stab wounds. And this one is set to go to trial. Let me bring in my think tank tonight, see how this might look in front of a jury or in front of a judge. Criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Al Wunsch III, criminal defense attorney Darnell, Crosland, and family law attorney Jennifer Brandt, all with me here. These facts are so heinous. Jennifer Brandt, let me go to you first on this one, please. I heard the state attorney in giving a press conference, this was about a year ago at the time of the charging, say that he saw premeditation 228 times in the backward movement of the arm and the forward movement of the arm, of course, accusing Mr. Fucci of the crime, and said that was premeditation every time he swung his arm back and then swung it downward at Kristen Bailey. Almost 50 of her wounds were defensive wounds on her hands, on her forearms, trying to protect herself from some maniac. This one going to trial, is this kind of like, as we say in criminal court, a slow plea? Or, Jennifer, do you think Aiden Fucci has a chance in front of a judge or a jury on this one, please?
I think he believes he has a chance, but I don't think any of the rest of us believes that he has any chance at all, because the evidence is fairly strong against him. But I think he is another callous killer, and I just think he feels that he can get away with it and that he's not guilty and should be set free.
Yeah, he is lucky, in my opinion, that he is unable to receive the death penalty for his alleged crimes because his age saves him. Prosecutors, they can only do so much with this guy if he is guilty of what police say he's guilty of. Oh my, Darnell, Crosland, tell me, if you were tasked with defending a guy like this, how do you counsel someone like that? Let's just say, for the sake of our analysis, he is of the mindset, like Jennifer said, that, you know, he thinks he can, walk away from this and that he's innocent, going to tell you he's innocent. And what do you do with it? How do you counsel someone like that, please?
Well, first of all, in 60 seconds, the prosecutor added up 114 times 2, so he came up with 228.
Right.
That was ingenious. But that doesn't equal up to premeditation. When I first heard the 114 stabs, I thought crime of passion right away. Just like police officers, when they start pulling the trigger, they always testify that they just couldn't stop. You black out. But in terms of how I counsel this gentleman, what he did was insane. All I need to do is find paperwork and medical support for that insanity, because this kid is insane.
Insanity defense. Al Wunsch, quickly, we don't have a lot of time. Do you think if he can find a doctor, insanity is the way to go for this guy?
Yeah. You can find an expert that'll say anything. They will dance with the one who brought him. So that should not be a problem with that whatsoever. And this kid is insane, and he should be locked up forever. And I hope that's what happens here.
Appreciate it. Al Wunsch, Darnell, Crosland, Jennifer Brandt, thank you all kindly. Aiden Fucci said to be in court this Friday, August the 5th. There's a motions hearing on his case. Trial set for November 7th. Oh, oddly enough, that's the same date as Kelsey Turner's trial. Our Court TV cameras, thank goodness we got plenty of them. They'll be there in both of these cases. Time for a quick break. When we come back, it'll be time to hear from you, our 13th juror all about Deshaun Watson, the QB for the Cleveland Browns, suspended for the first 6 games of the season for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. You'll share your thoughts right after this. Welcome back. Time to hear from you. Our 13th juror, Cleveland Browns QB Deshaun Watson, suspended for 6 games. The NFL could still appeal this decision. He settled 23 of the 24 lawsuits against him. We want to know what you think. We start with our comment of the day from Valerie, who says, well, how many times does he get to assault women before he's kicked off the team indefinitely? That says a lot about his character and mental thoughts while on the field, in my opinion. Ashley and I comment saying he settled because he didn't want the case dragged out any longer. He was never found guilty. And our next comment from Dina, says he should be done, period. Why do they all get a slap on the wrist instead of the punishment we would all get? You're not any better than anyone else. We're tight on time. Al Wunsch, want to go to you first here. Deshaun Watson and all his legal trouble. What do you think? Is this going to be the end of it, Al?
Well, they just added to the penalty 10 weeks of no dessert as a result of this also, just so you know. So they made it a little more strict. But all I can say is the good news for me is that he is being suspended for the 2nd week against the Jets. So we got a shot now.
2nd week against the Jets. That's awesome. You know, I'm a Steeler fan. We got to keep our personal feelings out of it. So, you know, if Cleveland's in trouble this season, I'm not going to be upset. Do I have time for another comment? I think I might. We got the next one saying that D. Watson wasn't allowed to play last year. This punishment is way too much. And finally, NFL could not care less. It's all show. If they cared, he would not be in the NFL. Quickly, Jennifer Brandt, quick thoughts.
I think that, first of all, it's not a heavy enough penalty. It should be a heavier penalty. No counseling for him. And really, I mean, he misses 6 games without pay, but he got such a big signing bonus that is really not affecting his pocketbook. And I think that's where they really need to hit him in order for him to feel some pain.
Darnell, Crosland, quickly, before we get a break, your thoughts?
It's a tough one for me. I mean, either you're found guilty or not, and it's not for the NFL to be, the morality police. So let the man play.
Let them in. Okay. Yeah, well, we got so many great comments. A big thank you to all of you who wrote in tonight and shared your comments with us. To be continued with Deshaun Watson. A big thank you to my think tank for being on the program tonight. Al Wunsch, Darnell, Crosland, Jennifer Brandt. Thank you all kindly. Always great to have you on the show and great to have you at home. Don't go anywhere.